All right, cool. So in this recording, I just want to give a brief introduction to what are the differences between a R Markdown file or even a Quarto Markdown file, which is the newer version of R Markdown that I really like, versus the R script, right? So when we do coding in R, the most easy, plain way of doing it, if you are using RStudio, is actually basically having an R script, which is this one that I'm showing right now. So essentially, you're going to start like you can add hashtags to comment your code and say I'm going to start by importing my data, and you do like data read CSV blah 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 dot CSV, right? You do your functions. You could do something like data filter age equals to 30. You can do all of that. You can do your modules as you are doing your coding. But the thing is, when you do R scripts, you can run line by line, but since it's a single file, a single thing, essentially, if you want, you can run everything at the same time, so everything at once. And sometimes it's hard to distinguish what is the actual output that you're getting. Because you need to remember that the code that you want to see is on line 4 and not on line, I don't know, 200, because your script is getting bigger and bigger. It is a very simple, so working with the R script is a very simple document. It's basically a text document. If you wanted to open your R script in a text editor, like even like Sublime or even Notepad or any text editor, you could actually create your script there. So I could do even like import, sorry, not import, I'm thinking about Python. So library, tidyverse, and like if I save this document here as a .r document, even my text editor knows that this is a code file. So you can see here that even the colors changed because it recognized that library is a function and that tidyverse is a string because it's from a package. So that's basically R script is always a text file. There are some limitations to that. Maybe you want to do something fancy, like with R, like you want to do a blog post, you want to do a presentation, you want to do a report, a nice PDF that you want to share with your colleagues of your analysis, and you don't want to show all of that code, right? You don't want to show 300 lines of code to be able to show a table because that's ugly, right? You want to show just the most refined thing. And also you want this to be reproducible. I want you to think of how many times you had to update a table, you had to update the figure because something has changed on your data analysis. Like, let's say you had a meeting for a project and the investigator told you, hey, actually, we should only use people that are above the age of 18 or below the age of 65. And previously, you had run your codes with every single patient. Now you need to open R, do the filters, generate the figure again, save it, and then put into the Word document or the Google Docs. This is very tedious, takes a lot of time. So one thing that the R Markdown file has in advantage to that is that you can generate a PDF, you can generate an HTML report, you can generate a Google Doc, sorry, a Word document. You can generate a bunch of different formats by using the same code. So this thing that I'm showing right now is our R Markdown file. You can even see here the .rmd. And to create one, if you haven't had a chance of using it, you can come to this part here and you can select R Notebook or R Markdown. I don't think there's a clear difference, but either one should work. I guess R Markdown is better. When you create on creating a new R Markdown file, you're going to be able to specify what is the title of your document, what are the authors, what is the date, and you can even specify here what's your type of output, if it's a HTML document, if it's a PDF document, if it's a Word document, right? And you can even start and do a presentation, like a slides in R. You can do a Shiny project, which is actually a interactive website. And you can even do it from a template that someone else has created. The cool thing is that all of this can be edited as you go, right? So let's start with this. You can see that the first section that we have in our code chunks here is actually called a YAML. So it is weird, but I'm gonna type in the chat. So this is what is called YAML, YAML, which is a markdown, a markup language that you can use to customize your report. For instance, I can come here and say that my title is template for Cox proportional hazards model, an updated version. When I click on render or knit to HTML, I'm going to run all of these, all of the codes, all of the text is going to be outputted to an actual HTML page. So if you remember, when I showed you before, this report actually didn't have this title. Now that I changed the title part, we have an updated title because I want to do it in that way. At the same time, you can add more authors. You can add affiliations. You can add institution. You can add a bunch of things similar. You can think that this is very similar to the way that you do a manuscript, that you do an abstract. So there are a bunch of things that we can customize and create our own reports. You can even add dates. So let's say you are working with Gemini in the standard 3 group meetings that we talked about. So the first startup, the middle meeting, and the wrap-up meeting. You can even add a date to this heading that says this report was generated in March 2nd of 2024. And then the next time that you run it, you're going to get a new date and update data version. So there's a bunch of things that you can customize and do. The really, really cool thing of the R Markdown files is actually that you can combine text and code in the same document. So if you look at my report, you actually see that I have a section here called packages required. And when I look here, this is formatted as a plain text, while this is executed as code, as you would do library, survival, library, GT summary. You can combine codes within the code chunks, right? And text as you have them outside of it. This is really cool because you can actually describe and actually report your analysis in a way that you remember, that you can communicate with someone when you're not doing a presentation. So if I gave you this report right now, you can actually read the text that I have, a sample data set. The long data set is available from the package R. I don't need to actually explain to you my code. You can actually see the way that I describe, much like a book, much like a PDF report or something. You can actually create and customize in that way. So this is really cool because once you do this, it's going to be saved. And if you open this in like 2 or 3 months in the future, you're going to say, oh, that's why what I did. That's why I filtered my data. That's why I recoded my variable, because I had this line of thought in my head. We discussed about this, and then you can create and organize your R Markdown file. When you do the R Markdown, you can even add formatting. So let's say I want to make all of this line here in bold. You can add things like Markdown notation, which is the double star thing. And if you run it again, as it's running, we're going to see an updated version where all of this is now bolded. You can do anything that you would do in like Microsoft Word, like you can make it bold, you can make it italic, you can have bullet points, you can have numbers, you can have even this, you can see how this is formatted as a special character because I wanted to make it look like code, like a text that comes from code like this one. So it's very, very flexible. There is even options where, look, for this graph here, if we look at the code that generates it, if we come here, check the distribution of time of survival, you can see that all of this code is actually not showing up in the report. If we look back again, you can see that we only have the text. Because I didn't want people to see the code because I don't think it's important or because I think it's going to be messy. So you can come and customize this. Let's see, where is the document? You can customize the chunk by saying, I don't want this code to be echoed to the user. So you use echo equals to false. And I even see that I have a typo here. This should be warning. And I don't want messages. So there's a bunch of things that you can do to prevent those ugly error messages, warning messages, this code that you don't want people to see to show up in your report. This is nice because it looks pretty. But also when you do it like that, you ensure, using the code, you ensure that everything is gonna be working the same way every time. So it's very, very reproducible. Let's say that in the future, this data set that I'm using is survival, but for William, which was using the registry, for Abali, that was using the dictionaries for the grid projects, those data are updated. Basically, if you load the new version of the data, everything should work fine because it's code, it is organized, you're gonna have the same look of your report, but essentially what is gonna change is actually your graph is gonna look a little bit different, but you're gonna have the same colors, you're gonna have the same theme, you're gonna have the same size of the figure and the same looking report. So this saves you a lot of time, and I can tell you, for what I do for PRACT, for the clinical trial, I have to send reports every week about what is the status of our patients, if there's any errors in data collection, how many patients we are enrolling on a weekly basis. This is what I do. I create a report like that, and I basically hit run every Monday, and I send an email with this report. The cool thing is that I can filter the data and say, I only want a report for the patients that were enrolled last week. But every week, everyone that is involved in the project, for instance, there in KCMC, we have Safiri, Linda, Timot, Alice, they are going to get the same version of the report. So it has the same tables, has the same labels, but with an updated data for every week. So this is very reproducible and very customizable. You can do all sorts of things with this. If you go to a meeting and you want to show your results to your group, if it's me, if it's Ricardo, if it's Obali, William, we like to see the code. We want to see the code to see if you guys are doing what we think you're doing. We want to discuss if that's the best approach. We want to see where there are changes needed. But maybe if you're going to show this to an investigator, you're going to show this to the chair of KCMC. If you're doing the presentation in a scientific event, you don't want to show code. So you can basically go as I did and say here for the graph and say, don't show me code, only show me the figure, right? And this is very good. Very, very customizable. Let me see the comments. Yes, it is amazing. And it's very nice because you can see on the options there that I have HTML. So if you remember, HTML is basically code for the internet. And when you run it, you're probably going to generate, let me find the file. Yes. So you see how we have in my downloads folder where I saved a document. Oops, my bad. You have the actual R Markdown file, but after I rendered, I have the HTML file here. If I double click this, actually opened on the wrong screen for sure, of course. Here, I opened the file and you see how it opens like a website. This is my Google Chrome browser. It opens up as a web page, even though it's not online, right? If I send you this address, you cannot access it because it's pointing to my document, but still is like a website. So it looks very neat, right? Very, very formatted, very organized. If you zoom in, you don't get figures popping off your screen. It looks nice, it's organized, so it's very, very good for that. But let's say that you actually want to send this report to the NIH, to the KCMC ethics committee to say, hey, this is what our study looks like. This is what our patients are. Or you want to send this report to a funder to publish something. You can actually save them as PDFs, as Word documents, and use those more standard formats that are accepted by publishers, by anyone else, right? So this is how it's really, really cool. Nice. Any questions thus far? How do you hide the codes? Okay. Edwin, for your question, you see how the chunks, they have the standard format of a chunk. When you create a new chunk in your document, it basically looks like this. So you say library package name, right? So you see that it has the three single quotation things. I'm not sure if this is quotation. I don't know what's the name of this in English, sorry. And then you have the brackets and R. This is the standard. But if you go into this add a comma, you can actually add options to your chunk. So my option here is going to be it's going to be echo equals to false. And what this does is that it prevents the codes to be shown to the user because the code is not echoing. It's kind of weird, but the code's not echoing to the user, the user. So you're not actually going to see it. At the same time, you can actually do something like, I don't want to see any warnings because I think that warnings are ugly. You can do warning equals to false. You can do things like, oh, I want my figure to have a width, sorry, that's my pronunciation, of 12. I want my figure to have a height of 14. And I don't know, I want my code to not be run. So there are lots and lots of options that you can add to tweak your output. And these are a few of them. If you look, when I share the template around, so you guys can see, you're going to see that the most frequent ones that I use is message equals to false, equal equals to false, and warning equals to false. Those are the most common, most frequent ones that I use. But there are plenty of options. Let's see if we can find like R Markdown cheat sheet. Here. So this big document, this big figure is a summary of all of the options that you have in our R Markdown and how to work with that. But for instance, you see here some of the chunk options. You have echo, you have error, you have figure alignment, you have figure caption, figure height, figure width, highlight, include. There are many options, but you can customize and search. So let's say you're doing your report and you think that how can I show only the figure and not the code? You can search for that in Google or ChatGPT, and it's going to tell you, hey, add this function here, echo, right? And you can sort that out. Any more questions? Is that a shortcut for the YAML? What do you mean shortcut, Edwin?
I like the one for the chunk, the keyboard shortcut.
No, I don't think so. When you create a new document like this, let's create an untitled one. By standard, it's gonna give you the YAML, the most simple version possible, which is only title, output, and date. But you can go crazy with that. Let me see if I have one that is quite big to show. Probably I do have this one. Yeah, so for this one, you see that it's similar. So here I have 3 authors. I have a different format. I have what is the resolution of the figures that I want? What is the format of the figures? What is the margin of my document? What is the alignment of the figures? And you can specify different formats for the same document. So I have this format, I have PDF, I have docx, I have table of contents for my docx. Anyway, there's a lot that you can do, right?
Yeah, while you are still here, João, it's important to note that this is Quarto. I haven't really done research, but are there any major differences between what Quarto would expect as, or the extent to which you can use Quarto's YAML compared to that of Markdown?
Yes, good question. So this is a good segue. I was showing you just up until now the R Markdown. R Markdown is quite old. I guess it's been around for, I don't know, more than 8 years, 10 years, I don't know. It is the new version of R Markdown is called Quarto Markdown. So what the developers, the same developers that created R Studio, they developed a new thing called Quarto that is supposed to be very flexible. You can use Python, you can use Julia, you can use C++, you can use a bunch of different languages with Quarto and get very similar results. So in R Studio, the most plain way of using it is actually with R. What I do is actually do it with R as well. But with Quarto Markdown, you can achieve very similar results, but you can do much more. So Obali was pointing out, like, is there any difference on the YAML? There are some differences, but you can achieve very similar results. So let me show you, for instance, this report is done using Quarto. It looks nice, has a nice font. The codes look a little bit different, the colors a little bit different, but you can achieve very, very similar results to what I just shown you with this thing here, right? It's quite similar, even though they are two different engines, but they are very similar. What Quarto does, Obali, to your question, that I believe that it's more beneficial is that it's much more flexible and customizable as well. For instance, one thing that I'm trying to work with is how to actually create a poster from our code. So let me run this. So this is what I'm trying to toy with right now. So this was an R code that just with a single button generated a poster that you can print and take to your conference. So we have a title, we have a logo, we have sections, we can even show like codes and figures, etc. The formatting is not perfect because I'm playing with it, but it's really, really cool in that sense that you can tweak it and work and create a poster like that, right? So let's see. The logos in the code. Okay, good question, William. So this here, for the poster itself, it's a little bit more of work that you need to do, but basically you see that we have the same YAML structure. For the poster, we have a thing called institution logo, and you basically have the path to the image that you want to use. So let's say that you don't want to use the Division of Translational Health Sciences, you can actually download a logo for KCMC and use it there, right? So those are things that I'm still experiencing with, that I'm trying, that I'm looking at. But let's see if I have some other one that I could show. Poster figures. If I just basically change the number of columns, I guess it could work. I don't know. No, it's not here. It's gonna take a little more time to get it sorted. But if we go to the actual Quarto formats, I guess. Or Quarto library, I don't know, Quarto templates. Yeah, starting templates, I think. Let's see, using a template. I want to find the there is a gallery of Quarto documents that we could look at. Quarto gallery. Yeah, maybe this is it. So with Quarto, you can create a report. So like this one, I was showing you the PDF. You can create a report. You see how this looks very much like a publication, right? You can create your standard saying, hey, page 1 should be only table of contents. Page 2 should be list of figures. Page 3 should be list of tables. And then you would basically start with your document. So think of this for your thesis. You could take the standard format that the KCMU Co requires, or that Duke requires, or that Brazil, the institution requires, and create this and have it for you. And you can actually write your thesis and add the results and everything to your thing. You can add equations. You can have references as you would do with Zotero with EndNote. It works just fine. And yet when you click a button, it renders up to a PDF, a Word document that is perfect. You would never need to have a messy table in Word and have it to drag it and mess up all your text. Or let's say that you add a new table and then you would need to update all of the table numbers to table 1, table 4, table 5, table 6, table 7. That is a nightmare, right? This would become automatic. We are running out of time, but just to show you, we have presentations. So it is quite easy to do. From the same code or a similar looking code, you can have this. Very standard animations. You can see how there's an animation there. You can do highlights for your code. You can add figures. You can actually run code as you are doing it, which is so cool. You can add equations. You can have tables. You can have lists with animations. Imagine this if you're giving a lecture, if you are teaching someone how to code. This is very, very cool, right? Let me go back. You can have dashboards. This is one thing that I want to explore a little more, but it seems to be very, very simple to organize. So for instance, this is a dashboard that is created using Quarto. It's much more simple than doing with Shiny. It takes a lot of time to do, and it's interactive. You can zoom in, you can zoom out. Basically, everything is possible. Websites, blog posts. There are people that do their personal CV with Quarto, like this person here. And if you go to their GitHub, you could actually find the code and try to build one for you, right? You can do books. You can do, a lot of things. There are even institutions like the PAHO or WHO that are starting to use Quarto to generate their reports because it's very, very reproducible.